Hello guys. So since I kind of failed last week to actually produce a second video, I'm going to do the next one right now. It's kind of going to be a combination of what I was going to talk about last week, and it also is going to serve as a demonstration for the next exercise. So I'm going to start out with this because what I have right here is a lot of students ask me as far as like what kind of or where can I get imagery to actually use. The one thing you do not want to use is anything you can find on Google. Google actually has pictures on there that you are basically licensed, and if you're using them for paid print work that a client has for you, that is actually illegal and you can be sued for that. So how do you work with images, or where do you get them? So I will have a complete lecture as far as just about images, but a lot of students ask me, well, where do I get my images? I always encourage that if you take them yourself, that's the best option, but that's not always the case in some um, some projects. So where I'm leading you here is another option for you as students is a couple of websites. One is called Pixabay and the other one is called Morguefile. All right, these are royalty-free images that you can kind of use, um, but it's like they're not the best images out there, and they often want you to actually try and use them, like repurpose them somehow. So it's like you can search for something like if I said wolf or something like that. You can see that there are several different um, like options for wolf. I'll close that. And then there's also Pixabay, which is actually my favorite when it comes to some of these. I pay for my images, so a lot of these are, you know, things that I really don't want to use for it. But these are some great options for you. Um, so I already downloaded a couple of them, but again, you can do a search for something and you get these options. The row at the top typically is for another site. It's kind of like advertising for another site that they want you to go there and purchase those. Prices can vary, so just be prepared for that. Down below, you're going to see that there are a lot of them here that you can actually choose if you want to. You just basically click on one. There's the option of free download. Click that, and then you can use it on whatever you want. So those are the options for that. But I already went ahead and downloaded what I want. So I'm going to go up here. I'm going to go to File, Open. And I'm going to find what I have. I have, as far as the download thing, I've downloaded two files. I'll open up both of them. They're going to both come up in two separate tabs. Alright, so I've got this one. I also have a picture frame option. Alright, but what I want to actually talk to you about is a few things, and I'm gonna start like the demonstration as far as what we're gonna have to do. Alright. So for the next exercise, what I want you to actually do is what is called out of bounds. Out of bounds refers to kind of like an illusion of how to get or how to make something pop out of a two-dimensional space. And that's what we're going to actually explore right now. Alright, so what I'm going to do is first off, I have my biker here. Alright, my biker is what I want to actually concentrate on. And I'm going to go through this a little bit slowly because I want to show you some tools as well to kind of like get you a little bit started in this. But I'm going to talk a lot about as far as layers go and talk about those a little bit as we kind of like progress here. Alright, one of the options here is I want to include this bike, alright, into an image. But first off, what I'm going to do is I have another one here. Alright, this document here, I'll go ahead and start a new one so you can see the options. Alright, so your new document options, what I have as far as a width and a height. I have them set to 17 wide by 11 high. and I have the resolution set to 200. RGB is your color mode. I'm going to go ahead and hit create. All right. Now this is the start of this demonstration as far as what your next exercise is going to be. All right, so it's an 11 by 17 sheet that we're going to go ahead and use. So I'm going to pop over to my my desktop option. Again, you may want to actually explore what kind of things you have the option for. Right now, I'm going to select all of this. So I'm going to go to my rectangular marquee tool, and I'm just going to start out here and just click, hold, drag. Right. I'm going to go to edit. I'm going to copy that. Then I'm going to go to my Untitled 1 tab, and I'm going to go Edit, Paste. And here it is. Here's this frame option. Now, what I want to do is I want to take this and I want to make it bigger. So how do I do that? Well, if I go up to Edit, Transform, Scale. I don't want to use anything else right now. There is a free transform option, which gives you this option all in one tool. However, for what I want to actually work with this, I just want to go ahead and scale it. So I'm going to scale it, or click scale. I'm going to grab a corner, and I'm going to hold down shift. Holding down shift will allow me to scale it in proportion. If I hold down shift and alt on a Windows platform, it might be the same on a Mac. You can scale from the center, and that's what I'm doing here. Now, you may notice that is actually an old version, so you may notice that there is some scaling still involved with it. The newest version of Photoshop actually changed a lot of things as far as how you work with this stuff. For this, now with just the scaling, you just have to grab a corner and scale it. It does not distort. If you hold down shift, it does distort. So it kind of goes against everything that I've kind of like mentioned in the past. But for Photoshop, it is a little bit different. So I'm going to grab this corner and I'm going to scale it to make it fit in here. Just like so. And I'm going to hit enter or return on the keyboard just so I can apply that transformation. Now you may notice over here on the right there is a layers palette. Layers palette, again, like I explained last time, is kind of like this combination of acetone sheets kind of like stacked on top of each other, which is this transparent paper. The transparent paper stacked on top of each other has different elements in it. That is what we have here. The background layer is like your desktop that you have here. Layer 1 is kind of like the paper you have on the desktop. And so on and so forth, as far as more layers that you continue to put on into this. So with this layer 1, what I'm going to actually do is really nothing. All right, this is going to serve as kind of like my background for my exercise that I'm going to be working on here. All right, now I am going to go back to the biker, and I'm going to use my rectangular marquee tool. I'm going to select part of this, but I'm not going to select all of it because I don't need all of it. Edit, copy. I'm going to go to my Untitled 1. I'm going to edit, paste. Alright, now I am going to scale this. I'm going to edit, transform, and scale. So I'm going to scale this quite a bit, actually. Kind of like so. Alright, so here I am. I have this image. I'm going to hit enter, return. And what I want to do is I want to select the bike. Now, I showed you last time the lasso tool, the polygonal lasso, the magic wand, stuff like that I've used to kind of like select some things. However, this time I'm going to show you another option. Alright, you can use the lasso tool, you can use any of those options to select. However, I only use those rarely. My preferred option is what is called the pen tool. And yes, Photoshop has a pen tool. and it is over here in the toolbox. If I go ahead and click on that, I've got the pen tool. All those different tools that we've kind of like learned in Illustrator. But I am going to zoom in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace around this bike. And I'm going to use my space bar to kind of like move and pan through the image. Just like so. So I'm panning through my bike here. To kind of get this this is going to be a selection option. So it's like I'm using the pen tool to kind of like go around. It does take some practice in order to do it. And let's see. Now I'm going to spend a lot of detail actually going through and getting every single tire thing here, because I don't want you watching this forever. So I'm going to kind of like trace around the bike very, very quickly. You can tell I'm not paying too much attention to what's going on here. But you should. So So just like in Illustrator, we can go through like a first run through, and then you can modify how the pen tool line is built. Alright, so I'm almost done here. Okay, so I drew a line around the motorcyclist, just so I can make sure that I have it all selected here. So I went around the whole motorcycle, and what I want to do is I want to actually turn this line into more of a selection. Okay. So how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to go around. There's a tab called Paths. If I go to Paths here, you're going to see that what it created is called a work path. All right, that work path there is pretty much what I just drew around here. Now I had to make sure I finished it, otherwise this method will not work. And what I mean finish is I have to go right back to where I began. Just like in Illustrator where I explained that you had to actually use a shape or end it, and that becomes a shape. Otherwise, it's just a line. Alright, so I did that. If I go ahead and right click, or actually control click onto the thumbnail, you'll see that what it does is it turns into a marching ants. Now on a Mac, I believe it might be a command click. But for this one I did was a control click. That's on Windows. Alright, so I got a selection there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to edit, copy, edit, paste. Alright, so in my layers, what I have is actually a couple different options. So I'm going to zoom out using Control minus, and it may not look like anything happened. Well, if I'm going to go up to my Move tool, and you'll see that my layer 3 is selected here, and it's basically a gray layer. If I click hold drag, you can see that I'm actually dragging this around. So it is a separate thing. I'm going to undo that. Undo is edit, undo. And to go right back where it was, but it's still there. Alright, so I'm going to turn layer 2 off for a minute. You can see that here we are. We have a bike that's kind of like floating here. That's what I want. That's what I actually want for this. Alright, so to kind of like take a side note here, I just want to go ahead and kind of like explain the whole Photoshop aspect, or that layers aspect of Photoshop. Alright, so layer 3, I have layers. Now you can rearrange these just by clicking and dragging to rearrange the layers, much like moving paper around on a desktop. So I'm going to move this around here, and so they're all in different types of layers. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to come down here. There are a set of icons towards the bottom of the layers palette. If whatever layer you select, if you hit the trash can, it does trash that layer. If you choose the next one, which is called create a new layer, it will create a brand new blank layer on top of whatever layer you are currently in. So right now it is layer 4, but I don't want that, so I'm going to hit delete, and it basically hit yes. Just to kind of like continue on, if you are working with Photoshop for quite a substantial amount of time, you may have more options as far as like you may have a ton of layers, in particular in one artwork piece. Sometimes to keep them organized, what you have to do is kind of like take each layer and group them, and that's what you have as far as a folder option here, folder icons. And you can basically group them all in the one folder and compact those a little bit into one particular group. So we're not gonna do that. We have not very many layers here, so I'm not gonna really touch on that much. All right, another option here is where you see FX. And I'm going to skipping these two particular icons versus here. And FX will allow us to kind of like choose different options like bevel and emboss. Where if we go to bevel and emboss, you can kind of see that you can change a bevel or give it a particular bevel. That's an outer bevel. If I say inner bevel, and then you can see that you can create a different type of bevel option. I'm going to cancel that. You also have options like strokes, inner shadow, inner glows, satin, color overlay, gradient overlay, pattern overlay, outer glow, and drop shadows. You can apply more than one to each one of these. So it's like right now, if I have drop shadow, I do a drop shadow here, spread it. I could actually add in a bevel emboss if I want to do that too, just by clicking on that. I hit OK. Alright, you also have, you might see that when you create these layer styles, you'll notice that there are sub layers to any one of these layers. So you kind of see that there's layer 3, and it's like bevel and emboss, drop shadows. Alright, so what we can do is, what you'll notice up here at the top is what is called blend modes. Where it says normal, or there's dissolve, there's darken, multiply, all these different options. If I hit multiply, you'll see that what it does is kind of like takes out some of the white pixels and blends it with the background. You can, each one does something different, so you can kind of like change these as you go. So you can get different blend modes going. Now there is opacity and there is fill. Now I'm going to turn effects off because what it's going to do is going to show you a difference. Opacity is set to 100%, which means it's 100% opaque. If I bring this down to, let's say, 20%, you see that it's 21% opaque, which means you can see through it. If I go to 0, it's gone. If I go to fill, and I do the same thing, you'll notice it pretty much does the same exact thing. But there is quite a bit of difference between the two. There's opacity and there's fill. If I show my effects, this is where it comes into play. If I change the opacity down some, you'll notice that it all disappears if I go down to 0. If I go to fill and I go down, you'll notice that everything goes down to 0% except for the effects. The effects are untouched in this particular instance. Sorry about that. Alright, so you can make it like 50% fill all the way up there. Alright, so that is the layer effects here. You can turn them off if you want to, just in case you just don't want to work with them. Alright. Now, there is also another option too, what is called a mask. Alright, a layer mask. A layer mask actually works this way. I'm going to turn this one off and I'm going to turn this one on. I'm going to use this before I do that, I'm going to make a rectangular marquee. Alright, rectangular selection. If I choose that, then I choose this layer mask icon. Click that. Oops, wrong layer. You have to make sure you're in the right layer before you do it. You do that, what it does is it trims it off. But this is what is called non-destructive. Alright, so right here it shows you the actual picture. It shows a chain link, and it actually shows you this black and white thumbnail. I'm going to turn the chain link off because what I want to explain is how a layer mask works. A layer mask is showing you what you select and what you want to show. So like right here, if I go to my move tool, I make sure that my thumbnail here is selected, and you can tell that by the white lines going in the corner. You can click hold drag and you see that you can move that around. If you go to the layer mask option and you click hold drag, you'll notice that the picture stays in place, but the mask moves. So think of the white area in this mask as actually a window looking out into what you see on the other side. So I'm going to undo that. Actually, let's do undo all the way. Like that. Alright, so that is what these particular options are. You can add to a mask if you want to, which I'll show you that here in just a moment. Alright, so kind of back to what I want you guys to do with this current exercise. Alright, this exercise will allow you to create the illusion of something coming out of a two-dimensional surface. As you can, we kind of already started that a little bit with these two layers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide these two layers right now. I'm going to go to the layer that has the frame in it. And I'm going to use my rectangular marquee. I'm going to draw a rectangle selection of this. Just the white part, because I want to keep the frame intact a little bit. Do that again. I don't like how it was selected a little bit. So just like that. I'm going to go to my layer 2. And I'm going to hit layer 2. And I'm going to go ahead and hit the layer mask button. Alright. So I've got that. Here it is. So it looks like just a picture right now. Then on my layer 3 option, as you can see here, it kind of looks like it's on top of that. Well, what I want to do is I want to actually trim off the portion that I don't want. So what I can do with these layers is you'll see that there's a layer mask. I want to make a copy of that to bring over. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key here. and bring it on top of that layer, which means it makes a duplicate of it. Now, what I want to do is I trim that off, but I want to expose some of the tire that's over this area. So I'm going to go to my layer mask, or the layer mask portion in layer 3. I'm going to go to my paintbrush. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to paint in that bike here in a minute. You'll see that when I'm on the layer mask, you'll notice your foreground and background is going to be black and white. Right now it's black, which is going to be taking away options, or part of the picture. If I go to my double arrow and switch it to white in the foreground, it's going to add that in. So I'm going to paint in the portion of the motorcycle that I want. Right. So there's that. So it looks a little better, doesn't it? Well, what we're going to do is we want to make it a little bit more convincing. We want to actually add some kind of shadow to this. So I'm going to go to my layer 2, which is just below the part that's on top. I'm going to create a new layer, use my paintbrush, and I'm going to make sure black is in the front there. And then I'm going to go ahead and just kind of like paint in what might show up as a shadow for this. Alright. And then what I can do is I can go up to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, blur it a little bit more. And then I'll change the opacity down some. And a lot of times when I create drop shadows, I multiply it just so there's more to it. Okay. To make them even more convincing shadows, sometimes I go ahead and create another layer and make a new painting. Make it a little bit darker where it might show up a little bit more of a shadow. I can change the brush size using my bracket keys. And I might go ahead and blur that one too. Multiply. Alright. And then that's pretty much it. That's what I want this exercise to kind of like be. I will not be giving you another exercise this week. This is actually going to take you some time because you are going to make 2 of them. And I'll go ahead and show you the actual sheet. So right now there is no exercise 5. It's skipped from 4 to 6. Alright, so exercise 6 here is out of bounds. And I want you to create 2 out of bounds compositions, much like you see here. You could do a search for out of bounds projects for this, and you kind of see that here. It creates that illusion of something coming out of a 2-dimensional surface. So these are prime examples of that. Alright. So I will be having another lecture on Wednesday. So basically take your time, look through this video again if you need to. Otherwise, I will see you later. Bye.